All right, so just for fun, kicks and giggles, let's talk about some fun stories of the cycle diet. There's lots of crazy stories I could tell with myself and with clients. As I mentioned, I think earlier in one of the videos, when I was in the early days of doing the cycle diet, when all my BMR parameters were in the high end, I was young, male, working out, all those things. I could easily eat, had to order 2-for-1 pizzas because I could eat both pizzas and a couple hours later have 2 liters of ice cream. That's something that was unheard of in the day. To say the cycle diet was ahead of its time would be a huge understatement. I remember when I went and worked at Muscle Camp in 1989 with the best minds in all of fitness from all over the world. You'd be surprised how shocked they were of my practice of regular overfeeds. Back then, before the cycle diet even had a name, no one would believe that I said I ate that. At the time, I remember the gathering of all of us working at Muscle Camp, some pretty smart cookies. We were all gathered going over our lectures, and Dr. Tom Dieters, who was at the time probably the most well-known person in all of fitness, he was publishing director of Muscle and Fitness magazine and other magazines and whatnot, very respected. He had heard about my cheat days, my epic cheat days, and he announced to everybody out there, because I had said I eat probably around 10,000 calories on a cheat day, and he said to everyone, there's no way Abel eats 10,000 calories on a cheat day unless he's drinking Crisco oil from the bottle. And all of this kind of reaction to the way I was already eating and seeing it work was kind of surprising to me at the time. I was introducing it to a world I didn't know. To a world that didn't know anything about it. So it was way ahead of its time, and people were so skeptical. So skeptical to the point that at one point, a very well-known contest prep guru in the States, and we're going back a long way, his name was Chris Aceto. Well, I would start my cheat day around 4:35 in the morning. And the day before, since we're all living in LA, Marina Del Rey, I went to Marina Del Rey Cheesecake Factory, and I ordered a cheesecake that was almost $40. And that was back in 1980, so imagine how many people that was meant to feed. And people still thought I was just doing this for show or something. And Chris Aceto actually set his clock, 4:30, came to just see if I would actually eat it. And of course I did. And people were just flabbergasted by that. There was no such thing in the bodybuilding community back then of cheat days. People were even afraid to use condiments back then, so they were eating tuna right out of the can. And when I told them that I put this or that on my tuna, like they couldn't believe it was possible and to be lean. But here I was, lean, leaner than most people, and it looked at least as good as any of the pros. And yet I was having a $40 cheesecake, the morning of my cheat day, and that was just breakfast. And it's funny because if you read my cycle diet book, you see later on when I talk about people who regularly practice overfeeds, people who compete in eating contests, eat way more than the 10,000 calories that I said I eat on a cheat day. And they can be, the Black Widow is a young lady who's like 120 pounds lean, and she can easily eat double 10,000 calories. But back then, it was a shock. No one believed it. Other funny stories are when I lived back east, and at the time, I was probably the most well-known guru in the sport because all my people won every contest. We would arrange to have back-to-back appointments, almost like a psychiatrist or a doctor, on Saturdays or Sundays with my clients, and it would become like a potluck because they all had cheat days, usually chose the weekends. So they would all come, and it became like a potluck thing. Someone would bring cookies, someone else would bring pizza, someone else would actually cook. We had one guy we called Kevin Smith, we called him the baker. Whenever he dieted for a show, he went into this baking mode where he baked for everybody. He baked for his neighbors, he baked for this person and that person, and he would bring baked goods by, and he was quite the baker. And people would sit around waiting for their appointment with me, and we would have this layout of all this food, almost like a buffet. And people would enjoy it, and there's some of the leanest, tightest physiques you would see around at the time. So that was funny. Also, that would be almost like a contest. People would start treating cheat days like how much weight can you gain in a cheat day, or how much of this or that can you eat in a cheat day. I participated in it once because that's never the goal of the cheat day. I mean, I'm just talking about funny stories in the early days of the cycle diet before it was even called that. I went through a donut phase, and the one time on a cycle diet day I ate 32 donuts. And that was over the course of the day, it wasn't all at once. But I did that in a cycle diet day, and then people were trying to top it. And then I once had a female client who would go to the movies, and you had the big family bags of popcorn, and there were free refills. Well, during the course of the movie, this female client of mine, incredibly fit, would go through 3 or 4 family-sized bags of popcorn while at the movie theater. That was one of the things she enjoyed. So you would get all this, and then some of the people would have, especially the competitors, would have a competition, how much weight could they gain in a day and then lose. And sometimes people would gain up to like 20 pounds and then the following week drop 22, 23 pounds. So all these stories were manifesting, showing that how resilient the metabolism is and responsive the metabolism is when it's trained to be so. There was also stories where I was getting someone ready for a contest, and one refeed day, a cheat day, wasn't enough. So I would give them 2. I would tell them, okay, take the next 5 days off your training and your diet. And everyone else who was so regimented and obsessed and guilt-ridden with diet regimentation were flabbergasted, but they couldn't understand that at all because they didn't understand metabolism. Everything was about standing on weight scales and making sure they went down and never went up, whereas I was always about reading the metabolism. So one girl in particular, way ahead of being contest ready, way ahead of where I thought she'd be, and like 5 weeks out from a contest, she was already contest ready. And if I kept her dieting at that point, then she would have flattened out and all kinds of negative things would have happened. So I said, take the next 5 days off your diet and off your training. Everyone that heard about this went nuts and said she just blew it, she's never going to win. She actually got on a plane and flew to Miami or somewhere in Florida and enjoyed 5 days on the beach, eating whatever she wanted, pizza, this and that. I think she gained like 15 pounds. And then she came back, and within 1 week, now she's 4 weeks out from the contest, when she got back 15 pounds heavier than when she left, and everyone was calling me crazy and this and that. Well, by 3 weeks out, she had lost 17 pounds. She was actually 2 pounds lighter than when she left, and that was a female. And she won nationals and won her pro card in that show, and it made me look like a genius. So there's been all kinds of stories like that, people having cookie eating contests and things like that, and it's been over the 30 years, it's funny to watch. It's never the goal of the cycle diet. The cycle diet is still about that mature mindset, but in the early days there were sure some funny stories surrounding it, and the reactions to people that could put on. I even still get this. I still get reactions. I go grocery shopping twice a week. Once a week is for my diet days, and then I deliberately, the day before my own cheat day, I go grocery shopping specifically for my cheat day and look around and go through the bakery section and stuff. And it's funny, I'll still get reactions from people, especially if it's summertime. And even though I'm in my 50s, I'll be in the grocery lineup and people will say, shopping for someone else? And I'll no. Or someone will say, you don't really eat that, do you? Like, you shopping for someone else? And they don't understand. Like, they think I live on, green beans and tilapia 5 times a day because I'm lean and I look good. And I said, no, that's for me. Like, oh, well, how long is it going to take you to eat that? And I said, tomorrow, and they're all flabbergasted. They can't believe it. So it's amazing to me how people assume certain things. They think that other people who look good are living a life of deprivation and denial, whereas the cycle diet gives you that indulgence. So, it's amazing to watch. Even on my vacations, it's amazing to watch. I'll go to a place like Dunkin' Donuts when I go to Aruba every year and grab my dozen donuts and take them down to the beach and sit there and eat. And people will actually stop and ask me about, like, how do you eat like that and look like that? And then the inevitable, I wish I could eat like that and look like you. Well, they don't understand. You can. If you're willing to train your metabolism and optimize it to make it more robust and to train it instead of letting it default program itself, then you can have all these things. So those are just some funny stories of the cycle diet. But I remember I'm quite fond of the memory of the 2-for-1 pizzas and the 2 liters of ice cream, because back then that even amazed me. because I didn't know what the cycle diet was then. I was still creating it. All I knew was that it worked. Overfeeding my body worked, and I explain all that in the Cycle Diet book as well, especially when I talk about competitive eaters and why most of them are so lean and so thin, and we look at that as well. So those are some funny stories surrounding the Cycle Diet. It was definitely ahead of its time in the 80s. People were flabbergasted, and still to this day people think it must be unhealthy. Well, I have one of the healthiest blood profiles at my doctor every year. So those are just some funny stories I thought I'd share with you. So welcome to the Cycle Diet. I hope you get into the swing of it as a lifestyle and not just as a weird niche to practice, having cheat days. But you do it as a lifestyle, enjoy it, and you start treating your body well, and it'll treat you well back. And it's a whole different way of looking at food, that you can actually enjoy whatever your chosen indulgence may be week to week or on an ongoing basis. So those are just some funny stories I thought I'd share with you, and good luck with it.